Travis Mingitzel. Candace Owens. This is for those of you who just want the main information, and then we'll leave. Last year, I did a reporting from her channel about how she had been shown the camera footage from behind Charlie Kirk when he was assassinated. And then she teased us. She wouldn't hand it over to the court case involving Tyler Robinson. And then said that she was going to obtain it. And then she did a follow-up. She obtained it. And then the pictures that I showed you, there's no blood behind his back. You know, no neck blow. So she's shocked. And so she's then been checking into other connections with Erica and her greed for power and wealth that is dominantly obvious. And yesterday, with the viewing of the Killshot from the backside, and she says it's okay to show because it's not graphic. There's no blood splatter. Oops, check again, left hand. She misses that. That's weird. Why did you miss that? I caught it right away. Because that's what you look for. So yeah, she showed the video that she said she had obtained last year, that she had seen last year. She showed the receipts of the video evidence, not the financial one, though she's tying it with the financial rewards for Erica. And she's also making connections that Erica is now using Turning Point to be placed in high schools for recruiting for sex trafficking. Isn't that special? So, before we further get involved into that, we got to do my famous introductions that everybody loves and eagerly watches, and then once my introductions are done, I'm bored. I don't want to listen to the main story. Joseph Smith was assassinated in Carthage jail by John Taylor and Willard Richards. John Taylor confesses, yeah, we did it. They canonized it in our Doctrine and Covenants of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, section 135. John Taylor and Willard Richards were the only two people in the room when Joseph and Hiram were shot. The thing that nobody wants to acknowledge is that the reason why he put it in, or it was put in our Doctrine and Covenants, is because the church was not leaking that Joseph or Hiram had pistols in their possession. But then it got exposed that they had pistols. Oakes would go on to publish a book on how Joseph Smith had a pistol and stood at the top of the stairs chasing out the mob with his pistol, shooting 3 balls out of the 6. Exactly. And so, as an expert investigator of criminal activity, from my being the only anthropologist of the ancient Middle East, science, I did the research on the whole Kirtland assassination. And every year I do a tribute to Joseph Smith. Likewise, I was able to instantly check for the forensic information behind Charlie Kirk's assassination and any other crime that comes up on the news. I know what to look for, I know how to investigate, and once I obtain the pieces of information that I'm looking for, it's easier to assemble the pieces together and find out who done it. But some additional thing that is necessary before understanding the Killshot again is that there's been, on the floor of Carthage jail, a blood stain that originally, once the church obtained it and was using it for tours, they put up a little plaque by the blood stain. Here is the blood of Joseph Smith, who was martyred. But under President Spencer W. Kimball, they found out that the blood was not Joseph's. And instead of assigning it to the actual blood of who it was, Hiram, Kimball ordered it all cleaned up as best as possible, despite it being a blood stain on the wood. You can't clean it up. You have to completely replace the wood. And it kind of defeats the purpose if you're using it as a historical site of church history. It's what's called splatter and evidence. And so, if you're a big avid fan of movie watching, especially the John Wick series, it's especially graphic, filmmakers have to make it as realistic as possible to ensure that they get an R rating for the film. None of it is real. People don't actually die except on rust. Very tragic. They have to be able to reenact a realistic scene without it being real. And so they have to make sure that they get blood splatter with the trajectories accurate on their movie making magic. And so a bullet or a shell casing is projected into the air, and it pushes forward with it everything in its path. And so when it connects with a human body, you're not going to have blood splatter go this way in reverse of the bullet or shell casing. You're going to see the blood splatter on the other side. Yeah. Exactly. Candace Owens exposed yet again that Tyler Robinson didn't do it. I've been screaming this the whole time, and I'm getting ignored because of the conspiracy to cover this up and let the assassin go. And so the blood stain occurred from the exit wound, not the entry wound. Hiram, being the only one in the room, while Joseph was at the top of the stairs, how did he get shot? So that Joseph then goes back into the room over his brother's dead body, weeping, and then gets shot. Real simple. Got to burst your faith bubbles to figure it out. Hiram was shot up in the jaw and right about here. This will not produce an exit wound, except maybe off the top of the head. This one would produce an exit wound out the back of the head. Blood stain on the floor and a pool of blood. Real simple to figure it out. This shot felled him to the ground, and while on the ground, somebody shot him right here. There was a 6-shooter in Joseph's hand, and then there was my 3rd great-grandfather's single shot. So my 3rd great-grandfather's single shot can't shoot him here, and then somehow magically come out and around to shoot him right here. Can't be done. There's a 2nd shooter. Now, was it Joseph Smith? Assassinating his brother after chasing out the mob? No. It's Willard Richards. The part where he confesses that he left the room after Wheelock gave Joseph the 6-shooter so that he could go get the sacrament bread and wine. Yeah, he got a 6-shooter for himself. And so, yes, that leaves John Taylor to be wrestling the single shot from Hiram, and it goes off into the jaw, fells him to the ground. Joseph shoots 3 balls, has 3 balls left in the chamber, sees his brother Hiram on the floor, John Taylor standing over him. Boom, boom, boom. Gotta shoot him one more time. Was it the watch? Or did Willard Richards say, hold still, we gotta make it look real? Because John says 4 balls. Because they are somehow not wanting to let people believe that Joseph had a pistol, and yet they want to make sure that there's more than 3 balls in John Taylor to say it couldn't have been Joseph. It's weird. When you try to cover up, the forensic exposes you. Forensics is science. So another thing, the pistol, or the entry wounds in the watch of John Taylor is from a pistol, not a rifle. We know this because of the forensics. Pistols don't put out as much of a force, and they're smaller than that from the rifles back in those days. The rifles are a bigger wound pattern than the pistols. So what is on the watch came from a pistol, not a rifle. In the door, very interesting. Looks like somebody tried to tamper with the scene after the fact. Yep. So, likewise, the blood splatter. Left hand. Yep. It goes into the C2 vertebrae, like I've been telling you the whole time, and as the prosecution even confessed in their court filing. Out this way. Not in, and then somehow out the back. As well as another guy who did a trajectory rendering from the prosecution's claims that it's from this direction, it would have to go through the jaw. There's no indication that it went through the jaw. Directly into the Z2 vertebrae. But again, the video evidence exposes the prosecution as fraudulently prosecuting Tyler Robinson. That's why I was screaming when the defense said we don't want the video shown in court because it's too graphic and will be biased towards mine. No, show it. It's the evidence that vindicates your client. Just so furious that this whole case is getting botched. And the Salt Lake Tribune also infuriated me when they came out with their video about how we got the assassin on tape and instead we're doing a fluff piece about how we were scared. They show the assassin. And they just dropped the ball on their reporting because it was all about them. Feelings, emotions, responses. I feel for Tyler Robinson. I've been a victim of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints too. The Strengthening Church Members Committee that punishes members of the church, and even those who are not, to destroy lives, to cover up and hide the crimes of this church. But this one, not just my case, is deeply evil at the depths the church will go to cover up and hide. The Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints is the Danite terrorist threat to the whole world, not just the United States of America. I've repeatedly, in my 10.2K videos, exposed the Danites. I've made pretty little pictures for you and repeat them often to remind new people that I've done the videos. The Danites are factual. They made their own journal entry and Nelson put it in the Joseph Smith papers. Of their confession of how evil they are. Confessing that Thomas B. Marsh's affidavit that caused the extermination order of Mormons is legitimate as a government document. They confess to all of the forged documents in Brigham Young's Doctrine and Covenants. Section 115, Section 116, Section 117, Section 118, Section 119, Section 124, Section 125, and Section 132. But the church is so evil that they have gotten Mormons who leave the church to continue to believe the lie. And to continue to spread the lie, but just with doubt promotion rather than faith promotion of Mormons who stay in the church being okay with the crimes. That's disturbing as a fellow Mormon myself. Murder of Brigham Young assassinating Joseph Smith was my red line. I tolerated the living prophets of Jesus' inability to translate and outright denial of translation and denying Joseph Smith as a translator. As frustrated as I was, as how easy it was, but I have to remember I'm the one who deciphered Paleo-Hebrew. Nobody else did. It's not obvious to other people. even though Joseph Smith makes it very clear. We believe the Bible to be the Word of God as far as it is translated correctly. We believe the Book of Mormon to be the Word of God. So if the Book of Mormon contains plagiarized material from the Bible, errors and all, obviously the Book of Mormon can't be translated correctly either. But that's not what they're doing. They're correcting the translation of those passages if you keep reading in the context. But nobody does the research on the Book of Mormon to figure that out. And so, yes, as much as people should have figured that out, I then can be frustrated with Mormons and ex-foes who don't figure it out, even if they don't know translation. Charity, for example. In the Book of Mormon, there's the passage from 1 Corinthians chapter 13 about charity. Charity is this, charity is that, charity is this, charity is that, charity is this, charity is that. Mormons will watch a PG movie, maybe even a PG-13 if they're on the verge of becoming apostates, that will include a wedding scene. And in the worldly wedding scenes, there's often somebody who's reading from 1 Corinthians chapter 13. But they don't say charity. They say love. And it is horrifying that Mormons don't catch on to this. Especially women, who read it often as men in the priesthood read the priesthood sections of the Doctrine and Covenants. It's even in their little motto for young women and for Relief Society. Love, charity. They're separate words. At one point in time, the church combined them together. It's because of the deception going on. And for people to not understand that when Joseph didn't write the Book of Mormon, had nothing to do with it, but after that listing from 1 Corinthians chapter 13, there's the scripture passage of charity, which is the pure love of Christ. Ta-da! That's how the Book of Mormon was written, to correct the errors in the Bible translation of the King James Version. But the church cannot allow that to be the case, because their narrative says the Book of Mormon is literal history of the ancient American Indians, and therefore there can't be anything like that, because that would expose their narrative as false. And that would mean that they're a fraud about Jesus, because that means Jesus didn't come to the Americas. So who did come to the Americas? Nobody. Except for the Knights Templar. Friday the 13th, boys and girls. The second vision. Those of you who are ex-foes, who know the controversy of the second vision, why didn't you catch on? Why? I did a pretty picture of it for you, repeated it often enough since then. The latest version of it is inclusive of all of it, even though there are some typing errors that I see. These things are supposed to be stuck in your brain. How does a Knights Templar for Friday the 13th have to do with the second vision? how does Senior's York Rites, with the highest degree of the Knights Templar, Egyptian gold plates, not golden, Solomon's Temple, New Jerusalem in America, Sword of Laban for the temple treasury, the Holy Grail bloodline, the Knights Templar motto, in hoc signis vinces, in this sign you will win, with a crown over a chi, not a T. Two swords. And Isaiah talking about the coming of Emmanuel with sign that just happens to be over the United States of America. Rock and a hat, huh? How did you miss this, guys? Because you are so set on your belief that you don't listen to anything else. Just like Mormon. Just like when you were a Mormon. So then you got to ask yourself, what then caused you, as a Mormon, who was so firm and set in their belief that the church was true, to be woken up out of it, but then to be stuck back in a different form called doubt promotion? And if you can't figure that out, then you will never be able to come out of this one for good. You'll just be going back and forth into whether your feelings should be faith promoting or doubt promoting. That's the church's trap. You fell right into it. Because the church now turns you into an enemy for being a doubt promoter. They call you names: anti-Mormon, antichrist, apostate, Korahor, Nehor, enemy. That triggers Mormons to pretend to be on the defensive to aggressively attack you. You're not seeing the bigger picture. So, I was really hoping for a death of Oaks today, especially at 1 o'clock. That would have been awesome. I would have been doing a happy dance. So yeah, some of this other stuff, yeah, the jaw thing, no. I'm not going to show you these pictures again. I'm just going to do a combined front and back view, so that again you guys are reminded of how the Tyler Robinson case needs to be dismissed immediately. But again, trajectory. If it comes from that direction, and the prosecution is claiming Tyler Robinson was on the roof of the Luze building, Tyler Robinson didn't do it. Tyler Robinson is not part of a conspiracy. I obtained the picture of John Wilkes, or not John Wilkes Booth, the other guy, the Kennedy assassin. Where he's getting shot, that still frame that was captured right at the moment he's about to be shot while taken into wherever it was. One of the iconic shots of American history, photos of American history. And then putting Tyler's face over it. I still may do that. Because with the release of the JFK files, we now know, as Trump leaked it before anyway, that it was the CIA who did a hit on the President of the United States of America because of his signing of the psychiatric dissolution bill. No more asylums in America, which means no more psychologists in America. The CIA had been bringing in psychologists from Nazi Germany to continue their human experimentation tortures. And then most of them got sent here to Utah. Northern Utah specifically. Southern Utah was used for nuclear testing. See how Mormons and their word of wisdom can handle nuclear explosions. The government would get businesses to then produce canned vegetables with mass amounts of salt. Because to try to lessen the effects of radiation exposure, they tell you that you need to take a whole bunch of salt. Iodine, isn't it? Whatever. So that's why mass amounts of salt were put into our canned vegetables. And then over the decades, as no nuclear holocaust emerged, despite the Bay of Pigs and the Cuban Missile Crisis, they begin to find out that too much salt in the human body also causes adverse effects. And so then they came out with low salt alternatives and no salt alternatives. And yeah. Just when Mom had me eating vegetables, they took it away from me. I'm now allergic to all things green, Mommy. That is probably the best mac and cheese commercial ever. The mommy deserves an Oscar for her performance. She's there washing dishes at the sink. And her son then says, I'm allergic to all things green. And she collapses into a sigh. Why she was not used for other movies and TV shows, I have no idea how Hollywood dropped the ball on her. That was a brilliant performance. Oh, God. Awesome. So yes, there's a bigger picture going on that people don't see. Candace is exposing this with Erica and her connections to the Epstein files and to Sarah Huckabee sex trafficking little girls in a sex cult for daddy operation in her state now. Dear God. You know. So yeah, there's a bigger picture and Candace is exposing it. But Candace also is a little too obsessed with Jews being involved in the Epstein files. The Epstein files is not a Jewish conspiracy because all types of human beings are involved with Epstein. That you cannot claim that it's a Jewish conspiracy or an Islamic conspiracy, even though there are far more Islamists than others. It is a human atrocity with the Epstein files. But again, the bigger picture, Alyssa Grenfell exposed this when she tied a Mormon funding or providing for Musk little girls to breed. As Musk is quoted as saying, I need a legion for Armageddon. That is the bigger picture. That is the tie to the church. That is also in the Epstein files. I met with the Mormon leader. The Mormon leader. The Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, from the Danites, being child sex traffickers themselves, have gotten other people to do the sex trafficking of little girls now. So yeah, the investigation at the Epstein Ranch in New Mexico, the Zorro Ranch, yeah, that's where the Mormon girls would have been taken. And I'm dreading the day when the investigation finds dead bodies buried there. And if it's a mass grave, that will probably break me. Because the way they're able to get so many thousands of girls involved is grooming, generally. But it's more detailed. Psychologists who are groomers themselves to get clients leave certain details out because they do it themselves. So they deflect on other people when they themselves are the ones responsible to a far worse degree. After the Charlie Kirk assassination, for example, you have a whole bunch of vultures of psychology swooping in to further traumatize and victimize the 3,000 kids that were in attendance watching it. I'm also concerned about the one guy, if not several of them, on the front row. It is now established as fact that there are certain red flag events that specifically hire out crisis actors. So that when a real event happens, it's supposed to cause confusion as to whether or not it's true, and then people then make up stuff like a Jewish conspiracy. But there's a normal response during a traumatic experience that a person witnesses versus a crisis actor who knows what's coming and has to perform on cue. And I'm deeply concerned about at least one, if not several, of the guys on the front row who were watching and their expressions. But this is Mormonville. There's lots of crime being committed on a regular basis. I think it's all part of the show. If you've ever been to a WWE match, the audience will intentionally act as crisis actors because they know it's not real. It's all for the entertainment, to encourage and cheer it on until Owens falls from the ceiling as he's descending on the rope to the stage. Oh, it's just part of the show. He's not really dead. No, he's dead. And others who have died in the ring, and others who have died from incidences related to incidences in the ring from their injuries. So yeah, this is a very tragic situation. And so for the prosecution to have the video evidence, to claim to be using it for the case, knowing that Tyler Robinson couldn't have done it, to not even be interested in the camera footage from behind, that Candace got it, and she's not handing it over to the court. the defense should be all over Candace saying, hey, you need to hand that over. We need to submit it as evidence. We need to get it verified that it's a legitimate source, which should be easy to do because it's on camera of the camera being there. And so it's easy to spot an AI. You can do the forensic investigation because the pixels will expose if it is a photoshopped AI. Because that's all AI is Photoshop or deepfakes. Just like Hollywood. Hollywood's been using AI forever. They just don't call it AI. They call it CGI, computer generated image. Yeah. Those who are producing AI chips are lying to the public, but nonetheless. So, this also implicates in the conspiracy Governor Cox, Senator Lee, others who came out and wanting the assassination of Tyler Robinson, getting overly protective of Erica Kirk, making sure they get to be in line to hug her. I'm a guy. I know guy behavior. And I still find it disgusting. Even though I understand we're weak. And we still fall for it every time. Cute little honey bunny flashes her eyes at us. And it's even more disgusting when we fall for it in our older age. Crap! Did I just fall for it again? I'm supposed to be experienced on this. I knew it was going to happen, and it still happened. Crap! But the super sacred secret of men that we will never tell women to our dying breath, except for me, is that when we are all in a relationship with one woman, we are faithful to her. Other women are not of an interest to us because we're in love. We naturally change when we are in love with a woman. And for some reason, it's not what the woman wanted us to change into. And she's been trying to force us to change in her will and image. And getting frustrated. And then if a man does do everything that the woman wanted him to do, she's not happy with it. And thus, comedy shows ensue about the jokes in marriage. They're not jokes to those of us who got to live it firsthand. I don't find that funny. But yeah, I notice the difference being a bachelor to being married and seeing and experiencing the changes I was going through. And then after she ripped out my heart, shoved it in a blender and frappéed it on high, back to being a bachelor again. I saw my descent into the bachelor mindset. And so yes, even though I'm an experienced guy, I've got 3 kids, I'm single again. Been so for decades. And as such, sure enough, I've got that bachelor mentality. For many people, it's offensive. When? So yes, Erica, being a female, now single, I am pretty sure women go through a similar metamorphosis. When they're single, when they're married, or in a relationship that's serious, and then when they're back to being single again. But they too have that. I don't know. I could be wrong. Maybe women don't need men. But nonetheless. And so yeah, people who get involved in a relationship who are not serious about the relationship also behave in a certain manner. That's why they're most susceptible to cheating. I keep trying to tell adulterers, leave your relationship first. They never listen. They want to crush their husband or spouse. Guys do it too. Guys are even worse. Maybe, yeah, guys are worse. Childhood peers, what they wanted to do to women. And so yes, the desire to commit adultery with a married woman. You know, once a woman gets married and she's got a ring on her finger, you now become a bigger target for predators. It is not a magic shield protecting you from guys. You're not all of a sudden ugly. There are guys who specifically target married women to have sex with you. And it's not for you to get you to do it, as much as it's to humiliate and emasculate your husband. And so there are even people who will know your husband who will purposely have sex with you to humiliate and shame your husband. And if he can get away with it for a long period of time, yeah, it's even more awesome for him of how he's able to have sex on the side with you while your husband is oblivious. But then when it all hits the fan, yeah, the relationship is over, he's destroyed the relationship, and he's no longer interested in you. That's all he did it for. There are those guys. And there are probably those women too. But probably different mindset for reasons why. I don't know. But the Danites, likewise, are under this same situation. So it's not just Erica Kirk who's demonstrating this kind of mentality now that she's single again, as a single mom, being compromised by lots of different people to now get involved in sex trafficking of girls through her Turning Point that she's now the president of. The Danites likewise did it to Mormons and to converts, wives of the men, even in the Danites. There's a reason why they wrote in section 117 that they are the Nicolaitan band from Revelation chapter 2. Even though they vindicated Joseph of not being guilty of being a part of the Danites. So wait, Joseph Smith was not the leader of the Danites? So Thomas B. Marsh was lied to, as he says? Yeah. So yes, for the 17th is when Joseph Smith gave priesthood and priesthood office to women. These Danites were raping women in the church, compromising them. Women who rejected their advances, they vilified and accused them, all to destroy them if they didn't conform and comply. And if they did conform and comply, they had to keep it a secret from their husbands. Because if their husbands found out that they were cheating on them, husband would have cause for divorce. And in those days, we didn't have the women's suffrage movement. No equality, even though the church was Utah was the one who prevented the Equal Rights Amendment. They shut it down. No equal rights for women. But the voting amendment for women, all the early 1800s was before all of that. America was still coming out of the Salem witch trials, where women who were raped by a man, married man, would accuse the rape victim of being a witch and sexually advancing him, propositioning him. And so court case after court case, even one with Senior or his father. There was an incident for the Salem witch trials. Could even be a grandfather, but there's a case on the government files of a Smith testifying on behalf of the two women actually, being involved in witchcraft, which, doubt it, but yeah, guys and people generally, when they commit crime and then get caught, they make excuses for why they did it or why they didn't do it, even though they did it. That's just human evil nature. So, yeah, all of this ties in together. But Oaks got leaked. That's the big picture that I've been trying to get across to people. Is Oaks confessed, and it wasn't supposed to be public knowledge that the church is responsible for Armageddon. But that's exactly what Thomas B. Marsh said that they were going to do 200 years from then in 1838. We are going to overthrow the United States government and ultimately the entire world. And then to do that, you have to have a massive conspiracy in place to take place over the next 200 years. Sure enough, Oaks said, yep, we're going to run a test run instead for 2020. All this time, they keep pushing the false translation by a redactor who is Christian, and no man knows the day or the hour that is all over the scriptures. Like I said, Isaiah, the word sign, there's the calendar date and clock time of the day and the hour of the coming of the Christ, Emmanuel. And yet, despite it being in Matthew as well, the Christian who put Matthew in his Bible wrote in, no man knows the day and the hour, in his Apocalypse of Matthew 24 and 25. We do know the day and the hour. The enemy knew the day and the hour. That's why they used it. Because Christians don't believe that there's a day and the hour in there. So nobody would know what they were up to, as they purposely do the actions of the villains of Jewish prophecy, according to the Jewish prophecy dates, called Revelation. And ta-da, Christians oblivious. And yet, the Left Behind guy, he started up the secret combination to overthrow the government of the United States of America based on his books. He became the Antichrist, thinking that he's going to bring about Jesus and therefore he's the good guy. And there's the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints lurking in the shadows of that criminal operation through the Scousins. And so yes, Tyler Robinson is an apostate Mormon. He's a furriest. So the church thinks that committing crimes to activate Mormons into fear to be loyal, which was the talk that got Uchtdorf booted out of the first presidency. And not get put in under oaks either. That's exactly what they do with the Strengthening Church Members Committee. Intimidate, harass, abuse, commit crimes. And the compromise of this church, getting Mormons involved in crime, having Mormons pay the church in this criminal operation. The church uses that as leverage over the Mormons. So that when church headquarters gives the call, you need to do us a favor though. Yep. And yet, other Mormons take the fall, and nothing is connected or tied to the church, even though there's a blatant, obvious tie and connection to the church. So yes, Tyler Robinson taking the fall for this, and everybody overly demanding his execution. Senator Lee says we need to make it a public execution. Well, he hasn't been found guilty yet. In fact, Candace, just yet again, he's not guilty. How long does this take? I'll probably have to put this picture in the middle and then have the front shot on the one side and the back shot on the other side, because it's just not sinking into people's brains yet. The church is the enemy, and they purposely had this incident in Utah. The church is trying to cause Trump to come in and destroy Utah, but it's just not working. Trump failed last year. Cox helped. Oops, Cox, no, that's not what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to obey Trump and get that detention center purchased for ICE out by the airport. Oh, Sister Homewrecker Mendenhall did a public announcement saying we're going to do all we can to keep this from happening. And oops. Or is the airport not in your district? That's what I was told. that incidences at a certain point around the airport are not in the jurisdiction of the Salt Lake City Police. They have airport police that handle those incidences. So yeah, I guess airport police don't have anybody to account for. That's also disturbing. Because there's no mayor of the airport. It's not a voting district. So, "32 nations are using reserve fuel now." And the longer this lasts, you got 3 weeks, Trump. 3 weeks. Oaks sent out the second wave of death threats this year. 5 death threats, just like last year. You failed last year, so Oaks is now reissuing the death threats before Easter. And I warned everybody, and then Trump comes out and declares war against Iran, and it's supposed to be done before Easter, and oh, look at that. How did Oaks know? He got leaked. That's how. Oaks is behind it all. And Trump is being used to make it happen. And so, yeah, you notice how the stock market is falling like I told you it would? Mormons hate it when I'm always right. And then I always tell them, I told you so. Question is, why didn't you believe? Why are you getting upset that I told you so? God, what does it take, Mormons? And so the cost of the war is increasing every single day now. It, in the beginning, was exposed as costing $1 billion a day. It's now up to $1.5 billion a day. And the longer it goes, the more expensive it's going to become. Last night, breaking news from Monica in St. George. The youth locked up in a concentration camp tried to escape. And in trying to capture them, to keep them captive in the concentration camp of Nazis, they rioted. Yeah, no duh. They're being abused in that concentration camp by the psychos. And they want it out. And so instead, the police are brought in, and they're not getting it. For the last 2 years, news story after news story, after psychologist after psychologist, after center are committing abuses against their own clients. This is just another example of this. And the children this time, instead of taking it, are saying, we're not going to take it. We want out. We want to be free. We don't want to be drugged anymore. And so, yeah, they try to catch them, bring them back into bondage. And so, yeah, they fight for their lives. And now they're being arrested as terrorists. Assaulting police officers who are arresting the wrong people. Those kids need to be freed. They need to be detoxed as soon as possible. Because we all know what happens when you've been drugged by psychotropic drugs by a psychologist for your whole life. Right, Oaks? So, and finally the Miami synagogue shooting. Anybody know where it was located? Anybody know what happened last year? The day after the death of Nelson. Right there. Salt Lake Tribune, why? So, yeah, I got the pretty picture snapshot for you. Grand Blanc was the Mormon church incident where the guy who was not getting funding from the bishop to take care of the medical needs of his son, nobody made that connection. And instead, people here in Utah raised money to help the mother and the child with the medical bills for their son instead, because the bishop wouldn't do it. And that's why he got angry. It wasn't anti-Mormon stuff. It's anti-Mormon for a reason. People don't just hate to hate. There's a reason. Even the Danites had a reason, and they plotted to overthrow Joseph Smith. You don't just say, well, I hate this person. No, there's a reason. You get told stuff. He was married to a Mormon girl. He knows about the bishop. He knows about, the welfare of the bishop's responsibility. There were connections previously. The bishop refused to help the child because he's not a Mormon anymore. So he's pissed. How does he take care of his kid? His kid is sick. The John Q syndrome. Everybody plays dumb to get away with their crimes. So in this particular incident, it's a clear indication of what's going on. The West Bloomfield Jewish Synagogue, Temple, Israel. And so, you just go down the 24, and then a little to the west, towards the Grand Blanc on the 75, tied into the 24. Yep. All in the same general vicinity, just like Michigan or Minnesota. From the test run in 2020. And so again, the Jewish synagogue, the guy rammed his truck into the building and then started shooting. Same scenario as the Grand Blanc one. But the Iran war is what's causing this. We're still waiting for a 9/11 event. Armageddon has already begun. Trump finally did it. We're waiting for the 9/11 event. This is not a 9/11 event. This was an isolated event. We need a 9/11 event. Mass casualties, at least in the thousands. That 9/11 event. The one that Islam caused to the Jews in Israel on October 7th, 2023. That 9/11 event. That's what we're waiting for before Easter. That's what has to happen before Easter. Because once it happens, then Trump can now justify establishing martial law and the Civil War. Unless everybody lays down and dies. Which, I don't know, maybe. Peaceful protesting isn't helping. So what happened at Miller Elementary School, Travis? You see my pretty picture yesterday? In the 3.5-hour video? Oh, God. Yeah. That's where I lived. That was my school for kindergarten and first grade. That was the incident with Beth. That's why I've been studying women ever since. So cute. They're so abused. How sad. So yeah, that's why certain movies, daddy-daughter shows, and husband and wives who love each other shows, and spouse dies, are traumatic for me. I would have preferred that she died rather than leave me. It would still cause me to break down and cry, but still, at least I know she wasn't cheating on me. She should have just left, and she didn't have the courage to do it. She tried to get me to do it. And in the end, she had to still do it. But she got other people to help her with it. The bishop, both our families. Finding it very curious that certain things are happening where I used to live. Very, very curious. Oops. So, yeah, blood splatter. C2 vertebrae spraying on the hand. It's obvious. Tragic. So, thanks, Candace. You do need to get this to the court case. But she still is not catching on, even though she knows that there's something up. She's just not saying the words that I've said in this video. So, yeah. That's why I kind of wondered if Oaks is going to die today, because that would be perfect. The day after rather than the day before, like Nelson. And on Friday the 13th of all days, because there's an accompanying sign in the heavens that I've shown you all this week. Would have been perfect. However, I'll have to check. We'll check. He still could do it at 1 p.m. It'd still work. If you're listening, which I doubt it, because he had fired James Rasband from the Strengthening Church Committee for failing to report my videos to him.